Hello, 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 beautiful people, and welcome back to another week of, the USL show where we are seeing the USL proving once again, that it is the greatest league in the world by not only with Pittsburgh scoring to go ahead of New England Revolution as of now, but Charleston also scoring to go ahead on Charleston as they lose 1-0 on own goal. I'm just saying they couldn't score. And it took Inter Miami to have Ben Pierman say, "Here's a goal for your troubles," because I still stand by Ben Pierman does this on purpose to try to make his team lose so they can come from behind. I think it's a part of the plan. Look, we have a jam-packed show for you this week. There's been some announcements. There have been some other things happening with the USL that aren't so great. We've had mostly a chalk weekend, except for like a couple of matches. But for the most part, everybody that you thought would win definitely did win, which is awful for me whenever I predict things. And then, everything else happening in the league, we're always going to predict things. But first, we have to get to it. Our show is being brought to you by the BetStamp app. We talked about this last week. And if one of you just decided to go with Phil's bets last week and just put it all together, you would have made $500. So listen, I'm just saying this because this is not a part of the ad read, but if you bet USL games, it's literally free money. They print it just for you. Just bet the USL games. That's not a part of the ad read, but we're adding it. Listen,
I'm not co-signing that. anybody who loses like $1,000 this weekend, do not at me.
If you bet $1,000, just send it to me. Just if you're willing to do that on a USL game, you are the USL Sickos account. Listen, BetStamp is not a betting app. No. It is a place for you to compare betting odds with other places, kind of like Google Flights or Expedia and all that kind of stuff. It helps you find the best odds across a bunch of different kind of books and whatnot. So luckily for you, BetStamp puts it all together. You don't have to look anymore. You find great odds, like wonderful USL odds. You can click on any matchup and instantly see all the different odds for games, player props, and even future bets, specifically the more in-depth ones like the Champions League that we could get into. Line shopping is the simplest way to get an edge in sports betting and maximize your chances of winning in the long term. Like if you were to bet Phil's stuff from last week, on average, BetStamp's users win an extra $1,000 yearly just by line shopping. So if you go to the BetStamp app or go to betstamp.app, and then go to sign up, use code USL. You be supporting us, and you will be feeding your bank account free money. Not on the ad read. Please don't sue us. So, thank you all. Please support us. Check that out. And Phil, I think you found some fun lines.
Oh, I
No,
was.
I'm on it this time. I'm on it this time.
Oh, it's John. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because Phil's retiring.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm calling it.
So the one I'm really liking this weekend, you've got Tulsa at Las Vegas. Las Vegas hasn't won a game yet. Tulsa looks good every time out. You can get them plus 225. So you bet $10 on FC Tulsa winning at Cashman Field. Not that hard to do. Tulsa ends up winning you $22.50 for the effort. The other thing, identical odds that the rest of the group was kind of liking, was Monterey Bay going into New Mexico, who is famously kind of mediocre at home, getting the win. That's that same plus 225 odds, and you can find that from BetStamp, compare, and get the best number for you.
Just like Phil mentioned before this show, before you guys ever heard it, this is also a Monterey Bay team who, whenever their foot hits the ball, it goes into the back of the net. So, I mean, it just makes sense. See ball, hit ball, ball goes into the back of the net. I don't understand why more coaches don't just coach that. When you shoot the ball, just score. It's not that hard, apparently.
Frank Yallop's magic.
Speaking of Frank Yallop, we interviewed him on Sunday, his former agent. So if you go on Sunday and listen to our insider, our agent insiders, I talked to Rafa from Forward Sports Group, It was a really fun thing. We talked about a lot. We talked about the Philip Goodrum situation. How would an agent handle that? We talked about the Enzo Martinez situation, which that actually got settled out of court, meaning my man got paid, and it probably still wasn't enough. But hey, man's got his bag. Would he handle that situation? He talked about investing in League One, how much the league has grown, how an investing and how an agency invests in leagues and in players and stuff like that. Really good listen, really fun listen. If you wonder why I sound the way I do on that, it was the night after my graduation, and that's all I have to say. But look, let's for real get into some serious topics. I hate to just kind of flip the switch like that, but we got a couple of big things that have happened. We're going to start off with probably the one that this sounds horrible because it probably will be the shorter conversation because we're all going to have I assume a unified response with San Diego versus Orange County. There was allegedly a slur used, derogatory term used, and it ended up being the super long extra time that we all saw, and we're like, what just happened? We immediately got an answer, and I'm just going to throw in my own opinion immediately with Orange County immediately suspending said player who was also sent off, so you can figure out who that was very easily. Good on them for immediately suspending them. Good on them for calling them out, being on top of that. It's unfortunate because allegedly this derogatory term was used towards Colin Martin again, which hurts my heart to every single part of it. Just simply be a good person. And good on Orange County for getting ahead of this. And I beg of the USL to do more than Orange County did. Don't just suspend. Like, the only way it's going to stop is if you put your foot down. And, we can get into new presidents in a second, and maybe he'll handle it differently. But you have a chance on your first time going through to make an immediate impact. And honestly, it could be one of the biggest impacts you could ever have in sports.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what you had said about this, it's completely unacceptable that it's Colin Martin again, that after 4 or 5 incidents in the past 2 seasons, just in the championship, we're continuing to see this behavior. We're continuing to see rather slow responses and dead silence from the league until they end up either giving a wrist slap or giving no punishment under the guise of, well, listen, we couldn't prove everything, the player's going to appeal, whatever they're throwing out there. I understand the need for due process. I understand the need to understand exactly what went on. But at a certain point, the culture on the pitch in the USL is suffering because of what's happening. The inclusivity for fans who don't want to go out to see a product where players are being abused for their identity. I mean, there are ramifications across the board. So I'm hoping that there's really decisive action here.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I think this is off the back of a obviously like incident of racial abuse in MLS, where there was a lot of criticism around New York Red Bulls and around the league for how they handled that situation. And this was a big opportunity for USL to show like, hey, we don't operate in the same way. Like, we don't have maybe the same levels of like, we are going to handle this like directly. We're going to just like get ahead of it, all that stuff. And I think like, unfortunately, it hasn't, like, again, it's been like a relatively like weak response, where I think often the soccer leagues in America like say that they're different than elsewhere because like we have this air of inclusivity and this like and the spirit of that inclusion, and it isn't true if the stuff you like, if you only say it, you got to do it. And that is where they're coming up a little bit short, unfortunately, right now. But hopefully we'll see at the end of the process the right punishment handed out for what went on.
Yeah, and it's another black eye for the league, and it's just something that can't keep happening as often as it's happened so far. There needs to be a decisive response. Just, it looks bad on Orange County, it looks bad on the league if something like this happens. And like Kaylor said, props to Orange County for having a quick response So, well, after they did after the game, but the league needs to be better about this.
I mean, this is what sucks, right? Because last year we had our show. It's been time for change. If you're watching along with us on Twitter, which a lot of you actually do, thank you. If you go to our pinned tweet, it's that show, and that was a show where we dropped a lot of news that happened that week. We ignored one of the most eventful weeks we had in the USL just on the pitch, forgetting everything else just to talk about crap happening in US soccer and the USL specifically. That was disgusting. And this year we did our State of the USL show, or State of the USL, show, or whatever, where we brought in people from League One, League Two, W League. We had people who identified as, non-straight, people who are non-white. We had people, who were straight, were white. We had a lot of diversity on this panel. And the one thing that kept showing up was this is a wonderful league with a lot of talent, who would do a decent job at being involved in the community, but yet cannot figure it out when it comes to making a stand against hate. When your league is being praised for what it's doing right on the field, which has always been the knock of American soccer, always. No one has ever said American soccer, why are they not good? Because of racial abuse. That's never been the knock. It's always been, the game sucks. It's not as fast. It's not as fun. Well, now the game is fast and now it's fun. And now everybody involved just wants to see them take a stand against what's right, or take a stand for what's right. And they're just haven't done it. And this is a chance for, Paul McDonough, which we will talk about in a second, to not only do what's right here, but maybe try to amend some previous wrongs, which we will talk about in just a second, unless anybody has some last comments they want to make on this. Nope. All right. So let's go ahead and get into Paul McDonough, because I had some takes on it, but I want to hear you guys first, because this is a guy who was suspended / banned from MLS, where Jake Edwards leaves, and we're like, congratulations, Jake. The league is in such a better place, and immediately brought in as a guy who was exiled from the top flight. And for some USL fans, it's like, thank God we have someone who can really stick it to the top league to show MLS how mighty we are. He wants to tear them down. And other people being like, hold on, he was banned from a league. I know everybody has thoughts on it, but I know, John, you have the article and you have the Backhilled podcast. So I want to kick it to you first.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of give people the context, because frankly, I hadn't heard of Paul McDonough outside of being vaguely aware of the Miami scandal. He's someone who's been involved in the American game, starting with a tenure as an assistant coach at the college level in the 90s. He was an agent for a long while, representing a lot of Caribbean players, some kind of fringe USMNT guys. Think about like Breck Shea, Juan Agudelo, who's of course now with the Legion in the USL. And that's really the jumping off point where he got into the executive side of things. So he was with Orlando City for a couple years in the USL, and when they made the jump into MLS, he was with Atlanta when they were getting off the ground, and then there was that Miami tenure that ended with him knowingly, essentially, getting them Blaise Matuidi as their fourth DP, skirting the roster rules, and then Matuidi wasn't even that good, so funny and illegal. But it's an interesting contrast to what you had in this last regime, where Jake Edwards is running the show, overseeing the entire league structure, and Mark Cartwright was the sporting director underneath him, big into the strategy in terms of what the USL is trying to do with youth development, trying to get those international connections in terms of the transfer market, broadcast deals, that sort of thing. We're seeing a different organization now with Jeremy Allenbaugh, who he was with St. Louis FC when they were in the USL. He was with Chattanooga famously. He's going to be specifically taking over in the championship. And then McDonough is sort of the larger strategic vision for the USL as an organization. he doesn't have those international connections that made the last group of leaders for the USL so strong. He comes with that scandal, which frankly feels a bit overblown. Like, what does it matter if he was trying to get around really arcane MLS roster rules, in my opinion? But I don't think he necessarily has the resume that inspires a lot of confidence. So there are question marks both ways. I'm just curious, how strong is he going to be? How much does he shift the direction that the league is already headed?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I was expecting maybe when you're replacing a guy who's been driving this like stabilization and like vision for the league, as John is talking about, I was expecting someone a little bit more like clearly aligned, I guess, in some like material way with like what USL is trying to do more broadly. And to me, this was like, you're getting a guy who like was previously a part of MLS as we've talked, but also is like a very kind of entrenched figure in Wasserman and like a giant player agency, which really, to me, like it feels like a guy that maybe has a lot of connections or knows a lot of people, but is that the guy to drive the vision? Like, or is that a guy that you would want like maybe on the team of the guy driving the vision? It's just, I'm not necessarily seeing like the bigger picture. And certainly he'll have all the opportunity to, prove anyone wrong and show that like, what he brings to the table. If he continues like what Edwards has done, and that's his, and that's what his whatever mandate is of like, go keep doing that, then like we'll see how he manages it. But for me, I was kind of expecting someone who maybe turned my head a little bit more than like former MLS executive / player agent. And maybe someone who's like had more like culture driving and like organizational type roles, like rather than specifically like relationship driven roles. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for the next appointment when it's going to be Bolt next time. But I'm with John that the MLS roster thing that is probably a little bit overblown just for kind of how they skirted the rules, especially since if MLS is going to get Nessie into it, they're going to skirt the rules to get him into the league and very much on the team that he used to be a director on. But one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me on that post was the mention of the 2026 World Cup and how he's probably going to be the leader for USL by the time that rolls around. And it's just kind of a concern of how is USL going to be positioned for that tournament once it comes around, and especially when the focus of the entire footballing world is going to be on the USL and the US at the time. Is the league going to be in the best position for it? Are there going to be teams around the country that are continuing to grow and have it be the best platform for the players in this league as well? So it really remains to be seen. But as John had mentioned, there was a lot of growth under Jake Edwards from when he took over to now since he's left the league, that it's really going to be interesting if we can sustain that growth and just keep these teams as established as possible and just keep them financially viable. That if we have teams that are folding or teams that are leaving the league, it's not going to be the best look.
So for me, I think where I've landed, and I'm just going to throw this out there, and I hope he does not mind. Since we are famously not real journalists, we needed to bring one on, and so next week we will be talking to Jeff Reuter. He's going to be joining us to talk all about this situation, talking about the USL in general, the kind of the past to the present, and what the vision is for the future. So, but right now, all we can do is speculate, right? And for me, I think where I land is that he was a former agent. So I wonder if he is going to be more of a player driven guy, right? Where he does want the best for the player. He is also an agent, which means he also has money on the mind, like everybody else. But moving from MLS exec from Atlanta United and Inter Miami, who are some of the most money making, organizations in MLS. I wonder if he's also probably brought in to make the USL as much money as possible before 2026. The last kind of part I landed on was, what if his role is not to inspire growth like Jake Edwards? What if his role is to oversee it and allow league commissioners like we have for the championship, like League One, like W League, like League Two, and let them truly govern their league? And let them be in charge of all the growth underneath them. Let them be in charge of rules and, how, when stadiums need to be built, when clubs need to frankly look in the mirror and say, you're not cut out for this level. I just wonder if that is going to be the role of him, is just to be, I'm going to work on the finances, and league presidents can be over their particular league, and I will just kind of oversee it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when you think about the fact that, I mean, his resume in MLS was being a cap guru. He's someone who, whether legally or not, knows how to understand these financial rules to an insane level of detail. And he did the same thing as an agent. And I think that there's really some credence to what you're saying there, Kaylor, especially given the fact that they've got somebody who's worked at Chattanooga FC to run the championship, right? Like, that's the Platonic ideal of that community driven, very high vision kind of club. So, yeah, I think that's probably where we're going to go. I will be curious to see. I think Ryan raises a really good point that if the USL wants to make a big leap in the next decade plus, 2026 is the time to get going with it. And that's going to be all important for this league going forward.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any last second thoughts? Nope. All right. Again, we're going to have a whole week to think about it before we talk to Jeff Reuter, a real journalist, as we all know. But I need to let that go. Let's go ahead and jump into the week that was, and we're going to start off with our USL Tactics show. Oh, no, I can't play it. There we go.
Hello and welcome into the USL Tactics Show, where today I want to talk about San Antonio FC, a team that had to move into a 4-4-2, an unfamiliar shape because of injuries, and suffered for it early. So you're going to see the progression of how Ann Marcina made the changes to get them the win against Las Vegas on Sunday night. You're going to see the issues right away with that left wing. They really struggled to get Camarney Smith to properly track back. Smith was acquired in the offseason. He was more of a forward with Loudon. And because of those sensibilities, he often left the left side of the defense rather unguarded throughout the first half of this match. Now, there would eventually be changes, but you're really seeing the issues here. Isaiah Parker had to come off with injury. That's the 8th injury for San Antonio, but Zico Bailey is just on an island in all of these chances. And you're going to see this also play out on the goal earlier in the game that equalized things for the Lights. Parker is still in here, but note how San Antonio closes much too hard to the middle. Smith has come to the entire opposite wing from his left side role, isolating the fullback and leading to that equalizer. You are seeing, though, what San Antonio was trying to do with that 4-4-2 in the first place. Smith on that left side, Nico Hansen on the right, would move up beyond the high fullbacks and really do well. So in the second half, and especially after that change, Christian Pirano came on in the first, you're seeing how Pirano tracked back in his defensive position and really solidified what San Antonio was doing in those wide areas. He's supporting Shannon Gomez. He's making sure that shot doesn't even happen. Here, Pirano's dropping in, working with Samuel Adeniran to get behind for the Lights, create progress, and draw their defense into rotation towards the sideline. And this is really the decisive play of the game. It's the winner. Adeniran and Pirano are dropping down that side, opening up just 2 center backs against 2 forwards for San Antonio. When Olawasai gets in, it's a goal, and it's showing how San Antonio is so good at that next man up mentality and making the changes they need to win games.
So I know that was about San Antonio, and they look really good. I know, and I kind of posted it whenever I posted the clip. The whole thing with San Antonio is that they're trying what they can to get the most out of the players that they have. And it's working out because they have a really good coach who can make adjustment, and they have just some of the best athletes in the league. Usually good athletes play well. That's just how that works. But I'm going to twist it just a little bit. I still like what Las Vegas is doing in a weird way. I understand that San Antonio didn't play well, but also Las Vegas didn't look horrible. And there's only been a few times where they just look bad. I don't think they're going to win many games, but they're also like may not lose that many games. They may just completely draw this season. And
They also haven't won a game. Like,
I know, but they also don't look like they deserve to lose many games. They just don't look like
That's
they deserve
fair.
to win it.
One really random detail from this weekend. It's not a random detail. Like the crazy detail from this weekend is that like I thought I was hallucinating for a second, and because Lights played Friday, Sunday.
Mhm.
That's
it's the only 2-day rest of the
insane.
year. It's crazy.
Like how I've never seen that, like since the days of like travel club, like this is not like, I don't know, like playing a weekend tournament in Kenosha or something like that. I've not seen the volume of games like played by Light. That was just insane to me because I was like, wait, why are they playing again? Yeah, anyways, really strange. But all in all, I think like too much to overcome. I don't know. I think San Antonio is like figuring it out. Lights, I don't know. I just think they're gonna. I don't know. I don't think they're gonna be very good, but
they're also not going to be very bad.
They don't have as much as like we want Kubo and Ledesma to be good. They don't have an offense at all. Like they're just kind of. It's basically lump it to Andrew Carlton. Like that's their best consistent thing in attack. That's crazy. Which I mean, he's having a great year, but Andrew Carlton.
I mean, Atlanta United did it for a while and it worked out fine.
Ish.
I mean, at least what Las Vegas has going for them this year is that they've only had 2 games where they got shut out, and that was at Indy 11 where they actually rescued a draw out of, and then just the 1-0 defeat to Charleston. And yeah, like Phil had mentioned that they had the kind of 2 games in the span of a weekend that we haven't seen since the Harrisburg City Islanders have been in the league. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting to look ahead for their schedule. I mean, they have Tulsa, Pittsburgh, Phoenix, Monterey Bay, and El Paso is pretty much these next 5 games that it's not an easy schedule by any means. And it's just kind of one of those that you're wondering, okay, where's this win going to come from that they still don't have, that we may legitimately see a competitive race between what happens first, Las Vegas's first win or Sacramento's first loss of the year. And at least what I would like to add is, since they played Charleston and San Antonio, both in Las Vegas, and Charleston and San Antonio play this weekend, do you think they like coordinated their trip back to Charleston together?
Hey, do you guys want to split the fare or no? Well, the one weird thing though about this game in particular is that Lights created like a lot actually against San Antonio, which I would say maybe it's more of a data point for San Antonio, like 2023 San Antonio, of they're not as good defensively as they were last year, and they're struggling to recreate that just like lockdown defense. Like Lights create 2.3 XG in this game, which is like by far their highest total of the season, and Pato Bateo-Faz is probably kicking himself like because he could have had a hat trick. But that is kind of like Vegas in a nutshell, of the guys on the end of these chances are not finishing them. And so it doesn't really matter how good like your XG is, because you're going to underperform it, unfortunately. Yeah, they did again against San Antonio.
I don't know. I want to like the Lights so much that I think I'm just going to will them into being a decent team. I think that's just kind of where I've fallen into this. The last goal is really funny though, because I just love it. Their keeper just stops. That one cracks me up. There's just some funny clips that happen in the USL, and they really get me. That one's a funny one. there is no disappointment. It's like watching an NBA player whenever he gets called for a charge or in like a blocking foul, and he just like has his hands up at me like I never did anything else. That's what it felt like. Really funny to me. Moving on, as I'm sure there's no way you guys do not hear this hurricane happening outside.
I heard it. I heard it there.
That
We're
it
still
is
not
so
getting it.
insanely loud. I had a real moment of being freaked out just a second ago, just because my entire like floor shook, but there was no thunder, so I have no idea what just happened. I love.
Don't
that
worry,
for me.
living by the beach, you get used to hurricanes.
I don't want to deal with that. Not me. All right. Going as far away from a hurricane as possible. How about we go out to El Paso, and let's talk about that El Paso Colorado Springs match. Of course, we should go to our residential El Paso fan, Phil. What happened in that one?
The quintessential game of two halves. El Paso absolutely dominated the first half in Colorado Springs. It was Petar Petrovic was absolutely eating Jimmy Ockford's lunch. And yeah, they were basically doing whatever they wanted offensively in the first half. Could and should have scored more. Dennis Kostishin had a couple of balls in behind Colorado Springs high line that should have been assists. And Lucho Soloniak and Ricardo Zacharias fluffed their lines, unfortunately, but they go in up 2-0, like deservedly. Colorado Springs barely had a kick in the first half. And then the second half was the exact opposite. Like it could not have been a more drastic change. And it started kind of in the last maybe 5 minutes of the first half. And then the entire second half was basically all switchbacks with another kind of a theme of the teams that hurt El Paso have found success down the right-hand side, like down their right-hand side, El Paso's left. In Deshane Beckford started to find space out wide and started to really like pull the strings for Colorado Springs. They do get a little bit of what I would say is a questionable penalty, even by Yuma's standards, to concede. So that did get them back in it there at the end with the 3-2. I do just want to shout out many in the USL will not know much about Emmanuel Sanupe, or Manny as we affectionately call him. He is a really, really good player who has been really hindered by injury. And he scores what turns out to be the winner in this one for El Paso. And if you haven't seen it and you're a neutral and don't have hate in your heart for Locomotive, then go watch the goal, because his celebration and reaction to scoring just like showed what a tough couple of years it's been in terms of his fitness and stuff. And so there's just kind of a big outpouring of emotion, and the whole team like really rallied around him, which was nice. Locomotive suffered well in this one, I guess, to a point, but switchback, there's another universe in which switchbacks win this like 5-4, and because they created a ton of chances in the second half.
Yeah, and I think the switchbacks kind of on the sly were not bad offensively in the first half either. Like, I was liking a lot of the process in the midfield. Henriquez was kind of just roaming wherever he wanted to create space, a lot of interchange in the middle there. I kind of want to shout out Miles Lyons for El Paso, like 20 years old, really getting his first legit run out in this league. And he has been spectacularly good at right back, filling in for Mark Navarro, who, I mean, we've talked about him before a couple times. He's got a resume that anyone in this league would kill for. So to be able to plug in for an oft-injured Navarro with someone that young and not really see a huge drop-off has been key for this team.
Yeah, and you're looking at an El Paso team who's scored in their last 8 games, a streak that you can't find as long unless you go all the way back to the 2021 season, where they had a span of 9 consecutive games scored. And even games they have against Colorado Springs tend to merit a lot of goals. You saw 5 combined in this one. There was a game last year that saw 8 combined goals between El Paso and Colorado Springs. You had another one in that 2021 season that saw another 6 goals combined scored between the two. So, yeah, I think this has been a very good run of form for El Paso. And with Loudoun, Birmingham, and New Mexico, some of their next 3, it's definitely a chance to kind of climb up the standings and potentially hunt down Sacramento.
You know, here's kind of where I land. Colorado Springs is so much better than I thought they would be. It's ridiculous. I really don't understand why, because it feels like it's exactly the same as it was last year, but with what appears to be less talent on the pitch, but it's working seemingly just as well. It's really impressive, and I guess it sometimes it is your next man up. The previously every person was an unknown at some point, right? Where someone known goes away, retires, moves up, whatever. The unknown person shows up, and you say you're unknown, you won't be that good, and then that next unknown person is like Messi, right? At one point, Messi was an unknown quantity. Where I also kind of landed this, and Phil, maybe you can push back on this. Last year, El Paso was up there with Brighton for the XG champions of the world. And this year, but they just never seem to get goals out of it. And this year, even though maybe they're not creating as many chances as they were before, that really freaked me out. It feels like everything's more normalized. It feels like they're scoring the goals they really are supposed to be scoring, and it feels less extreme than last year.
Yeah, I think like, and we talked in our first interview with Brian Clare out on Seriously Loco. His philosophy he talks about is control, which is not like a possession thing, and it's not a like high intensity thing. It is purely just like, how do we exert control over each individual match? And sometimes that means with the ball, sometimes it means without the ball. And I think the control with the ball is where El Paso are most different than last year, because while they were very intense and their attack, like they really attacked with like reckless abandon, it was reckless. And that was like what led to all of the, I'm thinking like the 5-4 loss to Lights, like all of these like insane kind of crazy results, the 4-4 in Colorado Springs. Like there's a lot of these results where it was, like, high octane, very entertaining stuff, but ultimately pointless, or and often pointless in the sense that, you were losing. So anyways, like I think that's where where you feel the difference now is like they're creating good chances just because they're playing better attacking football that relies less on like high intensity and constant sprinting or anything like that, and is more just like good players executing a kind of like simple system and adapting to the situation in front of them.
It's one of those things that it doesn't have to be complex for you to win games. It does not need to be, frankly, a Mark Lowry system. You don't have to be uber complex and just try to be smarter than everybody else. You just don't.
What I think is going to be really interesting looking ahead for Colorado Springs is their set of their next 6 games, and they have a 3-match road trip to the Eastern Conference with Memphis, Indy 11, Tampa Bay as their next 3, before having a 3-match homestand against Western Conference foes in Oakland, Orange County, and Las Vegas. That those teams combined are averaging 8.5 points gained on the season right now, and it's really going to be a true kind of just test on how much they can kind of gain out of these next set of games. Memphis is one of the teams alongside Sacramento and El Paso right now who are unbeaten in their last 5 games. That it could be a really interesting kind of gauge on where we think this Colorado Springs team is going to be come middle of June.
All right. Any last thoughts on this match? All right. Beautiful. We were going to talk about Indy versus Loudon, but we don't want to put Loudon's horse through that, frankly. Even though Indy really did play well and they got the result they deserved, and Loudon, hey, like they look kind of like they're falling back to earth a little bit after getting kind of kicked in the mouth by Phoenix a bit. And maybe Indy's getting back on top of it. I don't know. Just real fast go through this. We're not going to deep dive into this one, but just real fast.
I mean, shout out Loudon's ghost goal. Absolute banger, not given. So anyways,
how was it not given?
That's it. I felt for Loudon there, because it would have put that happening at 1-1, and then 10 minutes later you can see, or at 1-0, and so they would have gone up 2-0, and then Indy equalized like less than 10 minutes later. So yeah, tough on the night for Loudon.
I think I want to push back on the idea that Loudon didn't deserve the win. Like, they were taking it to Indy, then
Well, I
the
don't mean
Ghost.
that they didn't deserve to win necessarily, but I mean, it felt different than this was more or less a comment on Indy feeling like I feel like they finally got a point that they deserved. That was more or less a compliment to Indy than a shot at Loudon being bad.
It was basically like 1.5 to half on XG before the Ghost goal, and then it kind of went down. I mean, to be fair though, it's a trend for Loudon this season where they put in a fantastic opening 45 to 60 minutes, and then they decide we don't have the energy to keep pressing this hard. We need to sit back and see what we can get out of this game, and then they just bleed goals. And that's what Indy really needed. Shout out to Douglas Martinez, just to call out one name for Indy. It's been a weird path for him where he was a really proper number 9 with like Real Monarchs in that loan stint with San Diego. Sacramento used him as kind of this drifting, pressing forward, and Mark Lowry's doing the same. And he's finally understanding what he needs to do in that role. It paid off on both of the goals for the 11. So love to see that for a guy who's really been a grinder in this league.
And honestly, if any team needed a win in their kind of recent run of form, it was Indy 11. I mean, they had gone 5 winless in their kind of recent run up to this game. And if you look at their next 4 games ahead of Sacramento, Colorado Springs, Louisville, and Charleston, you were potentially looking at a tough stretch of games that if they had gone winless through that, you would really start to kind of just question where this project was heading. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting kind of match coming up against Sacramento to kind of how they approach that game. Sacramento has been the top team of the league by a pretty fair margin to start. But yeah, it was a match that Indy 11 needed a win out of, and that's what they ended up getting.
All right, so I want to go ahead and move on to the Legion versus Oakland match, and I want to hear you guys talk about it first because I just want to know where you guys were sitting with this one because I know where I landed.
I would love to say like I've never been dragged harder by a fan base since Detroit, other than Detroit, than the Legion fans after like they got real defensive about me saying Oakland kind of deserved to win. Listen, like before the very, very questionable call on Kavita at the end of the half that got him sent off and got that penalty and everything. I mean, say what you will, Oakland was looking like a little bit more of a dangerous team. They were getting those overloads on the right side with Rito and Tamakas. Daniel Gomez was great in his debut. He's a prospect out of that. Is it Project? Did they say it 5'10", even though the last number is
510? It is 510 because the O is the Oakland O.
Right, but I don't. But do they? Is 5'10" the area? This does not matter. In any event, yeah.
They call it Project. They call it
Okay.
Project 510. When we interviewed their coach last year, he called it the 510.
Area
Okay.
51 Oakland.
There we go.
Yeah.
In any event, the kid who played from Area 51 was killing it too. Oakland was you've hit on it a lot, Kaylor. The shape that they have, that back three that's very aggressive down the wings, gives problems to this Legion team. And yes, this game was deeply influenced by the referees. Birmingham can feel a little bit shorted, but to act like the Roots didn't put in a performance worthy of points is a little bit silly to me.
I think it's like it's one of those where like John is saying, like basically 2 things can be true. Like you can look at the fact that maybe they're lucky to get 2 penalties and like the 4th goal is a wild deflection, from distance and stuff. And Oakland like still played well. So they deserve maybe a little bit of the luck. I think Legion a little bit hard done by, certainly by the red, playing down a man for the second half and all of that. And then it starts to get a little bit loose. Second half, but yeah, I think it's one of those where it's like 2 things can be true, and Oakland probably it's probably fair enough that Oakland won, and like there's probably a couple of decisions in there that Legion can feel hard done by.
I do at least want to give props to John for finding that screenshot of Kaylor on the broadcast after that was like the perfect record scratch you may be wondering how I got there.
I saw from where I was in the stadium, I saw the big screen that's directly in front of me, and I saw myself on there. And I didn't think that anybody was going to screenshot it. I was just like, boy, do I look stupid. And John was right there for it. And I was like, all right. There was another picture taken of me pregame after a sprinkler hit me straight in the face. That was not a good time. It was a bad day for me. Look,
I just wanted to at least add as another stat that this is the 4th time in Oakland's USL history that they've scored 4 goals against a team, and the previous 3 teams were basically kind of all connections to the USL show because they've done it against El Paso, San Diego last year, Loudoun as well, and then now Birmingham.
Not the people's champion. Look, here's where I land on it. Legion are awful against 3-man backlines. Plain simple. They create a lot of chances from the wings, but they can never create anything down the middle, which will never break down a 3-man backline. Any team that compacts the box, Legion has struggled with. All of our skilled players are on the wings, but for some reason, we don't ever try to put those skilled players in the middle, and they just cannot break down the defense. Gabriel Alves and Moses Mensah are great together, except they were both kind of playing left wing back and just in the same place. And then there was no one there to defend on those counterattacks, like John pointed out. For the penalties, there was a picture that came out, did hit Fanwell straight into the hand. Although the arm was tucked into the body, what do you do with that? I don't know. I say with that with what you will. The second penalty was a little bit crap where Gabriel kind of pulled on the shirt. The Oakland player runs for 2 steps, stops, and falls over like a falling tree in the forest. Really impressive. It still gave it whatever.
It's not. It's not the second one is definitely not a penalty. I think that's safe to say. But yeah,
I think where I feel the most hard done by is Fanwell's first yellow card, which was Oakland's player gets I don't think he gets fouled. I'll be honest with you. It looked like a 50-50, and Oakland player goes down. Ref plays the advantage. You can see it on the screen that he plays the advantage and just says play on. And the Oakland player is still down as there's a cross about to go into the box. He rightfully calls the play to stop because there's an injured player where there's about to be a bunch of people possibly trampling his whole body. He rightfully calls the play dead. I'm fine with that. The issue is that he retroactively gave a foul to Oakland almost a minute and a half later after saying play on. I guess realizing that he may have missed a foul, and instead of giving the drop ball, he just says, here, Oakland had the ball. Where when Fanwell asked him, hey, why did you give that as a foul when I thought it was a drop ball? The ref allegedly, read the lips. I think that's what he says. He said, I'll ref and you can play. And Fanwell lost his mind, got his yellow card. He got his money's worth and then got the second yellow card, and that's history. The first yellow is where I feel the most hard done by. I feel like a ref let it get a little bit to his own head. But in the end, Legion didn't deserve to win before that. And that's why I'm not that mad at the referee in the sense that he caused us to lose. We didn't deserve to win, but we also never got the chance. That's where I land.
I am once again asking whoever compiles the highlights for USL to include the first yellow card if someone gets sent off for a second yellow card. Because it's not in the highlights package, and I'm left. I don't know, if I didn't watch the whole game, how would I know?
True.
I think what's interesting with Legion right now is that this was the 6th game this season that they've conceded multiple goals in, and they've currently conceded the most goals in the league at 18. In fact, if you look at the Eastern Conference, 3 of the top 4 right now have negative goal differentials to their name. And even just looking at Legion's last 4 games, they conceded 1 goal against Orange County 4 games ago, 2 goals against Hartford, 3 goals against Miami, 4 goals against Oakland. It's certainly concerning and continuously getting worse each game as they go on.
That's what happens when you play a winger at fullback and a fullback at center back. And we can't do much about it because they're on loan. Thanks.
So what you're saying is we should use BetStamp for Pittsburgh to score 5 this weekend?
There's a reason I was the only person to pick Pittsburgh.
This is, and this is also just further proof that the West is the superior footballing league. So
the East is a grinder this year. Like Hartford and Detroit might be terrible, but everyone else dead even, kind of.
You know what? I want to somewhat apologize to Richard Sanchez. He played a decent game until the very end, where it was it should have been a ball he saved. But for the rest of it, he kept Hartford in it. I know that's a bit backhanded, but you can't mention how well he played without mentioning that last goal. But he really did play well for the most of it.
That team feels rudderless right now. Like they completely changed shapes at halftime. They didn't even look like they had an idea. I know, not I, but some people were pretty high on what they were doing with that rebuild. But
I never was. They were just doing the same thing they did last year. Was we have a bunch of attackers, and then you say, what about your defenders? And Tab Ramos says, how about our attackers? And it's like a much worse version of El Paso last year. Because El Paso actually had a good goalkeeper. I need to stop. All right, let's go ahead real fast. Unless Ryan, you have something on that one. Looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, it's just that Hartford, at some point, they need to get a victory at home, and their next 3 home games are against Loudoun, Sacramento, and Louisville. And just knowing from a person who rooted for the Wilmington Hammerheads in 2016, and we had to wait until the end of July for our first home win, that's something that can just really demoralize a club. And I guess one thing a future game to circle on the calendar is an early contender for a toilet bowl of Hartford v. Detroit on a Wednesday night in June.
I'm already going to call it. Detroit City wins that game, and I'm just so off on Hartford. It's ridiculous because the only thing they know how to do is score goals, and they can't even do that. And they're not going to score against Detroit. This is too easy to deep dive on that. But geez, that feels like such an easy Detroit victory for me. All right, real fast. Let's go ahead and hit the Chattanooga Tormenta, where Tormenta is putting it together a little bit, and Chattanooga still looks like they just don't know what they're doing. Coach Ziggy is already running a little bit of a thin rope when it comes to Chattanooga fans. There have been a lot of shouts for Ziggy out, which feels a little tough considering the fact that he came in with a poached roster and they didn't really replace that talent with a whole lot. What do you guys got on this?
Is any case where you're calling for the coach's head after like 7 games when you had a objectively kind of cheap off season ever fair? Like, yes, it's not been the best start in the world for them, but they're getting used to this new setup, and they're facing in Tormenta a team that's a complete buzzsaw. I'm really liking what they're getting from Pedro Fonseca in the middle of this season. Been really good. He got the goal here, obviously, and that'll steal some of the headlines. But I think that the work he's putting in, I think that's been really good, and it's connecting play from a much more possessive defense than we've seen in the past. I know Preston Kilween is someone who I really liked with Pittsburgh, for instance. I think they made some smart decisions with this roster, and it's paying off for them. So good for Tormenta, but cool your jets maybe if you're the lesser team in Chattanooga.
A couple of really high quality goals from Tormenta as well. The second is an absolute banger. Not closed down as well as he could have been, but the bottom line here is that Chattanooga actually, again, like sort of in the lights conversation of actually created a decent amount, just didn't finish their chances and got punished by a team that is objectively better than them for not finishing those chances.
If you're comparing it to their starts from last season, Tormenta has a better start to this season than they did last. And Chattanooga, last season, through their first 6 games, they had 10 points. And through their first 6 of this season. They have 7. They're really just that one win away from an identical start from last season. And just knowing how USL 1 is, it's a league that's it's like the English Championship, that there's so much parity. And in it from week to week, I mean, at the start of the year, we were getting concerned and ringing alarm bells for Greenville Triumph. And now here they are sitting in 4th in the table right now, especially with Chattanooga only being 2 points out of a playoff spot. Let's let the league kind of play out a bit more before we start hitting the panic buttons for everyone except Central Valley Fuego.
Doesn't like the whole league make the playoffs anyways?
Except for the Fuego.
Literally, yeah, half of it that you're not allowed to if you're Central Valley.
Yeah.
Which they're look, we've been friendly with
Wait a
Fuego.
minute. Actually, why are we roasting that when 2/3 of the championship is getting into the playoffs this year?
Oh, I was gonna go USL in general. I just assumed that like until they're beyond like 20 teams, everybody just makes it.
Yeah. By the way, Fuego,
I believe they call that a League Cup.
Yeah.
I just want to throw this out there, Fuego, just real fast. If you're going to get snippy with people on Twitter, have some basis and have a little tact. If someone is saying that there are some possible homophobic chants going on, don't just say nuh-uh. Just either don't respond at all, or actually have a decent response, because you just telling your fans to screw off is how you lose fans, and you're hemorrhaging them anyway, dude. Like, I don't like going after admins, because it's a job where they're overworked, underpaid. I get it. But also use your brain a little bit. And if it's someone in the front office that is just like taking over the Twitter account and thinking this is what admins do, they clap back because Wendy's did it in 2016, just stop. Just quit doing it. You look like a fool. And your fan base is bleeding, is hemorrhaging, and you're at a point where if the team doesn't start winning, which they won't, and the club doesn't figure it out when it comes to getting involved with the community, which it seems like they won't, I mean, what are we doing? I mean, what was the point of all of this? Why did Fresno die for nothing? Fresno died for this? It makes me irrationally angry. I mean, it's not even irrationally angry. I think I'm very justified in being angry, but it's not even my own fan base. Like, I'm not a fan of this team, but it's just gross. I think it's ridiculous.
It's one of those cases of please meme responsibly, like, and just know the spots where it's like appropriate for the official account to get involved in a conversation like that in a jokey way, because that is absolutely not the time nor the place.
One last thing on this Tormenta match. There's a guy who I think is kind of gone under the radar. I've heard Walkin 90 mention him a few times, and I've heard our good friends at USL League One Updater talk about him just a little bit, but largely underrated because, well, midfield, like defensive midfield, is not a sexy place. Chris Heckenberg is ridiculously good. Through all the matches, as long as like all of my stats are up to date and the stuff that I've been keeping up with up to date, dude has been a stud in the midfield. He is ridiculously good in general, doesn't put a foot wrong, and he hasn't lost a single duel this season. Not one. Not too bad for the like 24, 25-year-old, huh? I mean, where do they like, this is a guy that was just chilling out playing college ball, and then they just said, come here. We could probably use you. We lost our one guy from Australia. We want to go back to Oceania. Hey, those seem to work out fine for us. Come on in. And Chris Heckenberg is a stud, man. If he's not in a higher league next year, I mean, either Tormenta has voodoo magic, they're paying him out the wazoo, or front offices are stupid, because he is way too good for maybe even the championship, to be honest.
So I'm a week off on stats on him, but so 24 years old, he's in the 96th percentile for his tackling, his defensive actions, and the volume of his passing. So he kind of does it all if you're looking for that kind of defensive midfielder.
He's so good. He is so good. Because we are running on a long show today because we had a whole lot to talk
Are
about.
you kidding?
I know. It's usually my fault. I always say that like it's not my fault. It is. Let's go ahead and get into some predictions, which we did not do beforehand because I'm just going to be transparent. I forgot. But we do have matches to predict, but not the specific ones. So I want to go ahead first. I want to start off with Pittsburgh versus Legion.
Yeah, this was a game, obviously, comes with a lot of stakes. It's been the rivalry, it has Halloween ramifications. Pittsburgh's riding high right now. For anyone who's watching live or listening, they just pulled off the cup set over the New England Revolution. And Danny Griffin with the only goal of the game. What a huge signing to get him back in that midfield. That said, I think the Legion are going to come in with a chip on their shoulders. They too have a midweek game, so you're at parity there. They lost, what, 3-1, 4-1 last week in 2 matches. They need a result, and they get at least a draw here.
Yeah, I had this down as a draw too. I think it's a classic Pittsburgh performance where they'll probably frustrate Legion for long periods, but I think Legion have enough about them to get a goal. I think it ends 1-1. Yeah, just one of those up at high mark.
All been there.
Yeah, I actually picked Pittsburgh to kind of carry the momentum off of this midweek result over New England, a New England team that actually featured Josie Altidore in the lineup, which I thought was pretty fun. But yeah, Riverhounds to get a victory here.
I'm taking Pittsburgh. Oh, I want to throw up. For a lot of reasons. The main one, honestly, is depending on how this U.S. Open Cup game for Legion goes. If this match even just ends in regulation, win or lose, if it just ends in regulation, Legion are looking at over 600 minutes of game time in the last 18 days. And that's before they have to travel to Pittsburgh, where they could be, if it goes into extra time, you're realistically looking at over 700 minutes of games played in 3 weeks. That's for people keeping up at home. That's 8 games in 3 weeks. It's a lot of minutes on the legs. And while they're doing a good job at rotating this year, there's only so much you can do. I also think that if it all goes wrong against Memphis, this is going to be a team that's down bad against a team who has never been higher than right now. I hate myself. I'm taking Pittsburgh. Moving on, we are going to go to, match of the week. I don't think that's a hot take. Charleston versus San Antonio.
Yeah, Charleston, I know I'm guilty of just following along with the live updates here, but Charleston just dropped their game against Inter Miami.
But they scored.
Yeah, scored. Actually, if you didn't catch the highlight there, go watch a really funny own goal with a kickoff of the face that ends up in the net. But
Danny Rojas goal.
Yeah, I think they've got a really good setup to go and beat this San Antonio team. I hit on it in the tactics show. San Antonio was missing 7 starters, and then they had another player go down. They're not going to be much healthier for this one. Charleston, they went with a pretty much A-team lineup, but I think that they reserved a little bit in the stores there. The way they press, the way they can control games against a meh San Antonio, it feels like a Charleston win for me.
Yeah, I have Charleston winning too, and I think it comes down to, unless San Antonio produce maybe 3 or 4 25-day contracts over the next 48 hours, then we'll see. But no, I truly think that Charleston's had a little bit of a meh stretch, and I think they bounce back. And we see something more akin to what we became used to in the early stretch of the season.
Even with that kind of mess stretch that Charleston has had, they still have the most points gained in their last 5 games of anyone in the Eastern Conference right now. I think Charleston go out and get a victory here over San Antonio to kind of further cement their spot atop the Eastern Conference. And it would lead into a very good No Meaningless Stat episode I have prepared for next week.
#ad. So this one was straight up. I wish I could say I got into the tactics of it and really thought about it. I was going to go with whoever's at home, and it's Charleston. I mean, Patriots Point is going to be rocking. They're having a great time right now down in South Carolina. San Antonio, while their injuries aren't great, it's going to be just another grind. They are the self-proclaimed mentality monsters, and they have proved to just do it over and over and over again. If this match was in San Antonio, I'm taking San Antonio, but it's not. I mean, Charleston is going to be rocking. I'm taking, well, the Battery. All right, moving on. Let's see. Where do we want to go next? Let's go over to New Mexico versus Monterey Bay. We talked about it a little bit with taking the bets, but let's go ahead and go a little bit deeper. Are you taking that bet that we talked at the beginning of the show?
Well, I did name it as one that you guys were preferring because I'm seeing a draw here. I don't know why, I just have a belief in New Mexico being completely fine, and that dictates that they'll get results eventually. I don't believe in Monterrey being as good as they are, as hot as they are in goal. They've got a big Open Cup game tonight that's going to take away some of their energy for sure, and they've named a pretty much first team lineup there. As hot as Christian Valesky has been, with I think 2 Player of the Week awards, 1 US Open Cup Player of the Round nod last time out, he's not somebody who scores goals in buckets. And I think if New Mexico goes with that back three that they've occasionally been looking forward to, they're going to be able to shut him down. They're going to have the numbers to play a defensive game that gets them at least a draw. So that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, I went draw too, and I'm realizing I mirrored John in some of my picks here. But well, first on Monterey Bay tonight, I actually like their chances against LAFC because they are LAFC fielded Las Vegas Lights 2022 roster like almost exclusively. It was really funny. I was like, man, these are some familiar names. It takes me back. But no, I think I have this one down as a draw because New Mexico, they seem to have found like a little something. I know their form at home isn't great, but I think it's one of those where Monterey Bay are due to regress to the mean at some point in their finishing. And I think it happens in this one where, you know, rather than putting 3 or 4 on New Mexico, maybe they just get 1.
I actually went with Monterey Bay to pick up a win in this one. If you're dating back to last season, in the 6 games that New Mexico has played at home, in their last 6 games they've played at home, El Paso's been the only one to get a win out of that, and they've been unbeaten in their other 5. And even then, this season, it's been only Oakland to keep New Mexico off the board. So I think it will be a high-scoring match that Monterey Bay just barely gets the result in.
I always find myself not wanting to be too rude, right? And because we are in one of those places that, you know, things we say get around, but Tim Bacchus has been really bad, like really bad this year. And Monterey Bay has been scoring at an ungodly amount. And I just don't see it changing. I'm taking Monterey Bay. New Mexico just doesn't win at home that much. Tim Bacchus, I say he's been really bad. For his own standards, he's been pretty rough. And, you know, yeah, one guy may not be hitting, but there's always Alex Dixon, by God. Like, I mean, he's just doing the dang thing. I'm taking Monterey Bay. Don't feel confident in what I just said whatsoever. Next up, we are going to go to another match that we kind of talked about. Well, actually, no, let's skip that one. Let's do El Paso versus Loudoun.
What a fun game, by the way. Like 2 of the most interesting and fun to watch offenses that there are, and I don't think anybody was really thinking that. Oh yeah, I'm forgetting about that. New Mexico had an Open Cup game as well. Whoops. Yet, just a real aside before I get to the pick. When your Open Cup matchup is Phoenix against New Mexico, I'm treating that like a league game in my head, and there's nothing you can do to change that. So improve U.S. soccer. But back to the matter at hand, I think Loudon is starting to drag just a little bit. I know for sure this time they're the only team with an Open Cup game, and they're gonna go full out. This is their first time in that tournament, and they are hyping this thing up. So tired legs against an El Paso team that I think executes on a similar style in a little bit more of a sure way. It's going to be 3 points for the Locomotive.
Yeah, I have El Paso winning this, and it is a lot down to the fact that Loudon have to, after a midweek game, come out to El Paso in a much warmer, or like a legit hot climate. It is like reaching the 90s in El Paso these days. So yeah, I think it's just gonna be a tough environment for him to come into and get a result, especially against a Locomotive team that's fresh, because they don't participate in the Open Cup. So, to my knowledge,
It's a fake tournament.
Yeah, I've actually locked El Paso to win this one. I think this match is going to be pretty reminiscent of Loudon's defeat to Phoenix a few weeks ago. That it's just for them going cross country to play these Western Conference opponents, it's just been very challenging within their history. They did play El Paso last season, and that was a 3-1 win for El Paso when that game was held at Segra. But yeah, I think it's going to be El Paso who's just in the better form right now to get the win. So I'm locking them.
I want to go ahead and ask you to change my pick, Ryan, because my brain had this game in Loudon. I wrote down the matchup and I just thought it was in Loudon. Couldn't tell you why I did that. I'm going El Paso then. I just knowing that it's in El Paso is enough for me, to be honest. Midweek, I think you can do midweek and then play at home and it not hit you as hard. But having to do recovery on a plane, good luck, man. That it's just not great. I'm going to go ahead and go El Paso. Let's go ahead and move on. We are going to go to the league of the one environments, and we are going to go with North Carolina versus Madison. Now, this is one that we predicted last week, but I'm an idiot and didn't realize it was this week because last week there were no Saturday League One matches, and I didn't realize that because I saw Friday, Saturday, and I was like, that's the same week because there's always matches on Saturday. Get it together, League One. Please. Don't confuse me like that ever again.
Yeah, this.
Oh, no. Rest in peace. Oh, you're back.
Wait,
you're alive.
Am I back? Okay, good.
You're
Good.
back.
Right on time. Yeah, so I mean, you've been talking about it a lot with this Madison team having an elite defense. They haven't given up more than a single goal in any of their games, within the league context at least, other than they gave up 3 to Chicago House in the Open, which is weird. But I mean, they've given up 1 goal in their last 4. Yeah.
That was like a rotated team, just to be honest.
For sure. At the same time, there's probably not a more talented offense at a bare minimum than North Carolina in League One at this season, at any rate. They beat up on a down a man Fuego team last time out, but I will beat the drum of Alex Anderson being amazing any chance I can get. So I've got North Carolina here, but this kind of is must watch if you care at all about League One.
Yeah, I have North Carolina too, but I think, and if I remember correctly, I don't know that I picked North Carolina in the last. I will not be held responsible for my original pick. But no, I think it is like just barely. And I still really like what this Madison team is doing. It's probably the first time that we're like high on Madison's on-field product since their inception. And yeah, they've been fun to watch. So yeah, definitely the game of the weekend in League One for my money, but I've got North Carolina winning it, just overpowering them with that offense they've got.
And Phil, to answer your question, interestingly, everyone who picked that match again this week kept the same result that they predicted for last week. So I'm going with the draw on this one. Forward Madison's still the last remaining unbeaten team in USL 1 right now, and it's them and Northern Colorado who both have matches in hand over the rest of the league. So I think it's going to be a very exciting match to watch, but I think it's one that ends up with the points shared.
I'm taking Forward Madison. I'm weirdly confident in this, which means you probably should go ahead and hammer North Carolina because my record this year is awful. But look, with what they have, I've talked about defensively of how good they are, and I can name they have like Osman, Krul, Mel, and stuff like that. Their back line, their actual center backs are good. But Stephen Payne and Grebhard out on those like wing back positions are really good. And this is going to sound kind of ridiculous, but they're like 3-4-1-2. It's such a bizarre thing to actually see in person and actually see play because you see it, but they truly go with the 2 men up top with going really wide with a 3-4 in the back. That it's a really unique attack, and I don't know if North Carolina can handle it. Will Madison's defense be able to keep North Carolina from scoring more than one goal? I think North Carolina can score in bunches. I know that, and they can absolutely score 3-4 goals in this. But I don't know if North Carolina can hold it up against this Forward Madison attack, which is just extremely unique in of itself. Moving on to one more League One match, and we are going to go Greenville versus Richmond. Richmond is a team that winning the Shield last year and doesn't look that great. And maybe this is a question for the Walk-In 90 folks, maybe not. But I mean, it almost feels like Terzaghi is broken. Like he's just not doing what he has been. Granted, he's probably still going to score like 26 in the remaining games because that's what he does. But right now, it's not clicking. And the team that is clicking right now is Greenville. They are on a run.
If you think about the forwards that Richmond is putting up there alongside Terzaghi when they're trying to generate that offense, it's Carlton Belmar, who hasn't done much scoring at any level in the USL for a couple of years now. And Matthew Bentley, who he's got the number 9 shirt. He's ostensibly a striker, but he's a little bit more of that roving type. It's a little bit of a question mark of who is going to generate the offense that they need. At the same time, if you're looking at the other side right now, Greenville came out in basically like a proper 4-3-3. They let Leo Castro cook. He got 2 assists in their last game. They're really looking good right now. I know we were all a little bit slanderous earlier in the season. And so against my better judgment, yeah, I picked Richmond here because League One is havoc.
Fair. Yeah.
I finally have a pick that's different from John's. So this is how I win. And I picked Greenville to win. I really like what they've been doing. Like since they got thumped by Madison, they've really looked like a different team. Despite a pretty tight loss to North Carolina, aside from that, they've looked good. And I think they get a result here and they prey. I think they prey on Richmond's just overall kind of meh-ness at the moment.
What I think is interesting is if you compare each team's first 7 games from last season, and I know Richmond has played 6 already, but the point difference doesn't matter. Each of them had 8 points after their first 7 games. So each team has had a better start to the season this year than they had from last season. But I've just been more impressed with how Greenville has kind of recovered, like you had mentioned, Phil, from after their defeat with Forward Madison, and they played arguably the best team in the league right now, very close. So I'm taking the Triumph to win this one.
I'm also taking the Triumph in this one. That frankly, and this is going to be another one of my truther. Hey, this is a guy I need to pay attention to. I am such a big fan of Daniel Wu. It's ridiculous. He is kind of their right center back, right back, whichever one you want him
He
to
was
be. And
so good at Georgetown.
he I'm surprised they have him playing in that right back area or that kind of right center back. I really thought he could be a true like libero of in the middle of the field, like taking the ball up the field himself in the middle of the park. But they're just like, how about you just play right back instead, young blood? And then his defending is so good anyway that if they want to go to that 3-man back line, they can. He himself makes Greenville super flexible because they've tried this 3-man backline thing before and then switching to this 4-4 or this like 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3, whichever one they feel like. They've done that before, trying to have that flexibility. But with Daniel Wu, they're actually doing it. He is so incredibly good. And I think he is going to be a guy that if you're watching this match, just keep an eye out for him. I think he's wearing the 2. I can't remember off the top of my head. He is just incredible, and I think he's going to be a real X factor in this match. And like I said, Terzaghi still exists, so if he comes out with a hat trick, don't be shocked because that's what he does. All right, who has some final USL thoughts? Anybody? Any soccer thoughts for the day?
I'll pivot it into the ending here just with a really dumb Indy 11 fact in that between proper Indy 11 and the W League team who will be in action ASAP, they've got Cam Lindley and Cassidy Lindley, his sister, which is super fun. Yeah.
Oh, that we have a couple of other those. I mean, Hark's kid is on the W League team, which the Liberty just released a kit that is just so good. Tommy Sone's daughter is on Legion's W League team. There's a whole lot of those. I love it. I love seeing like actual club stuff going on.
Yeah.
I love when clubs are actually clubs and not just teams. So good. Anybody else with some USL thoughts?
I'll just be nursing my wounds here for a little bit. That I did never get a call back about my bid for USL presidency. So I tried to hide my bitterness during the discussion about Paul. I don't know if I did it effectively, but yeah, I'm just putting on a brave face.
I don't know what nickname can be short for Paul. I mean, like Bob is obviously Robert to me. I've called Richard Sanchez Dick Sanchez. I don't know what Paul is short for. There's no real way to like take a jab at him other than just calling him Paul.
all of the names I'm thinking of are Portuguese, so that is not helpful. Paulinho
McDonough that's a different guy.
Well, I mean, when you have the job next, they won't have to change much of the press releases. They just have to replace the 2 middle letters of each of your first names.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I don't know if it's your first name, but like whenever you do eventually become, the president, I mean, I will be calling you Philip. John, when you take over the championship, you will be Jonathan. Don't know if it's your name, but you will be called it. Well, congratulations, Jonathan.
I just want to say that Paulinho McDonough sounds like someone who enjoyed Magic City when he was in Atlanta.
I don't know what to do with that information, but it's out there.
It's work for MLS Cup.
Yeah.
And this is why he will never come on the show. He heard that clip and was like, I'm out.
Yeah, once upon a time, this show interviewed Jake Edwards. Can you imagine?
Oh, man. All right. Any final? Well, let's go ahead and move on to final thoughts of the night. I want to start with Ryan.
Yeah, I know I always drink Arnold Palmer during the show, but I've always done the light one, and now I've switched to the diet version of it. Just doesn't taste as good as the light, but considering this has 1 gram of sugar versus 26 grams of sugar in the other one, I feel like that's a fair trade-off to make.
What makes a diet other than just don't put sugar in it?
This has 10 calories versus the other one being 260. So,
oh my god.
Actually, no, 15 calories. So.
And that was the light version?
I
What's
don't
the
know.
full? What's the full flavor? Like, what?
I don't think there is a full flavor. This is just what they sell per container. It's tea that is it's iced tea and lemonade. I don't think there's a healthy version of it.
Yeah. Sure. Phil.
I was trying to think this week. This week is all like, I don't know. I felt like I came out of a haze the last few weeks. But as you can see, the winning streak continued despite not shaving. So
Congratulations.
Believe in the beard. We're back, baby.
Playoff beard.
Yeah.
It's finally on the table. John?
Yeah, the New York real estate market is heating up for me. I've hit up 9 apartment visits in the past week. So yeah, but I blame my landlord for jacking up the rent for next year. So got to explore the options, but we are in the process.
Damn.
I mean, your toilet and roof and floor are always flooding anyway.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
As long as you keep the art on the background of your next place.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some new print type things to liven up the look here.
I mean, right now we're trying to figure out how to do something with this room because it just looks so depressing, but it's fine.
Scarves.
Okay, you can't see them. They're all on the floor right now, but we'd have nothing to hang them up on, and I refuse to put them back on hangers like I was back in college.
I did in my old place. I did curtain rods, which worked out pretty well. You just don't have them over a window, and then you drape them over that way.
Yeah, we thought about that, but we're trying to figure out if we can actually do that because we can actually put holes in the wall, but we're not allowed to use command strips here.
Isn't that the weirdest thing? Yeah.
What?
Yeah, because they said it strips the paint, but apparently drilling a hole into it is fine.
Yo,
That's what I
It
think.
only strips the paint if you're bad at removing it.
If we weren't allowed to put command strips up in our like last whatever 6 or 7 apartments we've lived in, we wouldn't have had anything on the walls. Like like it would have just been all our shit would have been on the floor. Like that's I don't know.
I am personally getting very sick of this Open Cup run for the very sense of I am so tired of recording podcast. 14 days, 10 podcasts. That does not include the USL show. I'm so tired of it. And I know I could take a break, but also I don't think I can because that's the grind set, baby. But today was my first day teaching at the school I'll be teaching at next year. No child died, which was a plus. I didn't die, which is also a plus. So overall net positive went pretty well, huh? Yeah.
That's the barometer. No deaths.
Yeah. Yeah. No deaths. I almost lost a child. I did almost lose a child. That already did happen. We were leaving and we were like halfway down the hallway and this one kid was like, "We left a kid." And I'm like, "Huh?" As it turns out, they were just chilling in the room. Don't know why they didn't leave with us. All the rest of their friends left. They were just sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor. Why not? That's what they do. Thanks, children.
Discipline.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit like a Mr. Miyagi moment. I mean,
first in, last out. Like just outworking everybody.
Speaking of the grind set, come on.
Yeah, I need to take a little bit of advice from that girl. Like she just could not get enough of it, I guess.
Her mentality is just elite.
I don't want to hear
San Antonio 25-day contract income.
Mentality monster.
Oh man. So one last plug for everything. We had another episode of Kit Season, their 6th episode, where they had some good stuff. They had Des Moines' Pride kit. They had San Antonio's championship kit. They had a white T-shirt from FC Tulsa. They had another kit that I can't remember off the top of my head. By the way, if you didn't see the kit that Tulsa released today, it's a doozy. I love that they get with the local artist, but like if you haven't seen it, look at it. Just be prepared for what you're about to see. We also had the interview with the Agent Insider, which was a really good time, a really fun one. And the last thing is, oh boy, I lost it. Next week, Jeff Reuter hey, cannot miss that. Normal showtime. Be here. We're going to be talking about the past of the USL and to what the plan is going forward. So that's about it. And even though he was not with us this week, let's go ahead, cue it out with Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.